Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Fred and John Talks.
Hey, Fred.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm good. I'm real good.
We actually hug a lot more off camera. The fist pump is just part of our shtick. Well, as we always say, John and I are best friends, and we've been at this for quite a while now and doing a lot more videos, a lot more in the pipeline. Mm-hmm. John is going to be taking the lead today, and the episode is called You Are Not Alone. We're going to be talking more about human connections, the importance of it, ties in with overcoming loneliness and doing something about loneliness, because it's such an epidemic, not only in our own country, but in countries like the UK, Australia, Japan, and America.
Yes.
So that being said, I'm going to turn it over to John, who's done a lot of research, and of course I'll have things to say too, but you're the main man.
Connections is the word, Fred, for sure. I mean, if it weren't for Fred and John Talks and you and I deciding to do this, we wouldn't be able to spread the word about how important connections are, let alone loneliness or being socially isolated, which are two different things. But a lot of people are lonely today, and it's not just here in the United States. We're discovering that the UK, which did a tremendous service by doing a commission starting in 2017 through 18, the Cox Commission, and they've done reports throughout the whole government wide now through 2023. There are reports coming out of Japan. Australia has reports going back to 2021, 22. They don't have as extensive a government programs as the UK. Mm-hmm. And then I think one of our recent talks, we went into the Surgeon General report from the United States.
And what they're doing in Connecticut.
And what they're doing in Connecticut. And the 2023 Surgeon General report, I believe, is the first time we've had a government statement here in the U.S. saying that this is a health advisory alert, a critically important health issue.
And I recently made a hard copy of the Surgeon General's report, and it's long and has a lot of information. So what does that say? That says to me that, even on a governmental level, there's a lot of awareness about this. There's a growing concern about it.
We need a national conversation.
Yes, growing concern that spills over into mental health and, suicides. Mm-hmm. We've talked about this before, but anyway, what is our focus going to be today as per your research?
Well, I want to bring up a couple of lighthearted things first of all, because we don't want to get too serious too quick. You and I love this vocalist, Diana Krall.
We do.
And one of her songs that she does really magically is Alone Again Naturally.
Yes, it's an old song.
It is an old song, yeah.
Can't remember the name of the guy who first recorded it, but Diana Krall's version for our listening audience. Well, you want to see a dynamic blues jazz singer and her version of that. So talk more about Alone Naturally.
So what is natural about being alone? I mean, being an OBGYN doctor, I realized that when I delivered a baby, the baby is alone to start off with. You start off in swaddling clothes. And yes, you may have the obstetrician. Yes, you may have a neonatal doctor. Yes, you may have somebody else helping out. And hopefully you're going to have parents. But in a lot of respects, even biblically, I don't think we're meant to be alone, even though the song often winds up with the words, alone again naturally.
The song should be called Alone Again Unnaturally.
Oh, maybe she'll sing a song like that.
But as we were talking before we went on film, my take on it is that he is being cynical, like, oh, my girlfriend broke up with me again, naturally. That's just my luck. Or I lost my job, naturally. Alone again, naturally. Here I am alone. And if you we're both familiar with the words to that song, he even alludes to, jumping off a tall building,
Yes, he does.
ending his life.
Yeah. Being alone, a lot of people don't really think about it until it happens to them, but wars and the aftermath of wars make people alone. You have wives who lose their husbands all the time and their loved ones or their sons and daughters to war. You have
A lot of widowhood and a lot of losing of one's children fighting at war.
Yes, and you have divorce and the aftermath of divorce, which creates sometimes loneliness, isolation. Yes, I think
My own divorce.
Well, tell us about you have two sons and a daughter, right?
2 sons and a daughter. I'm divorced going on 8 years. I've lived alone for 8 years, as you know, and as our audience who have been following our videos, I've talked about this at length in the past. Up until recently, living alone was sometimes sheer agony, especially the long, lonely nights. And another song comes to mind, another Saturday night, and I ain't got nobody. I got some money because I just got paid. Oh, how I wish I had someone to talk to. I'm in an awful way. But if people watched the episode where I talk about my revelation, I've really been, by the grace of God, been freed from that oppressive loneliness. Yeah. Doesn't mean I don't get lonely ever.
Yeah, correct.
Just I'm freed of the everyday chronicity of it.
You and I are in the group who are over 55. I'm not going to say my age anymore or yours, but the combination is we're not close to 200 years, are we? We're getting there. Not close. 160?
I'm bad at math.
Yeah, let's don't do it.
Let's not do it.
Let's don't do it. The thing is, even medical health conditions when you get over 55 can tend to isolate you. If you have a stroke, if you have a problem with your health like cancer or cancer death. So, of course, vets are highly isolated. And I really believe we should do a whole episode and discussion about vets and how they're treated, how they're not treated, and the problems that they go through.
Enormous.
Yeah, we're going to go through that in a separate.
The VA centers are overrun with, with needs.
Yeah, more people, more personnel needed.
There was a time I remember well during the Iraq War and then the Afghanistan War, where more soldiers were dying by suicide than in combat.
Yes, imagine that, especially during Vietnam.
Yeah.
A couple other things I want to mention that are relevant, I think, to our talk today is, apart from being an epidemic in the UK, the US, Australia, and other countries, the health risks and the outcomes of people who report loneliness in surveys to the governments show that there's more stroke, more heart disease, more blood pressure problems, more diabetes, and more premature death.
More trips to the psychiatrist's office, more medications for mental health reasons.
Yes. Now, there's a website I want our public and followers to follow in Australia. It's AIHW.gov, which stands for Australia Institute of Health and Welfare.gov. AIHW.gov. They have a tremendously important report that was put out in 2023. And some of what they're tying into loneliness there in Australia is that gambling has become a major problem in Australia. And they're tying that and starting to look into research of how that portrays in loneliness and being isolated. And I think it was in 2023, 20 through 21, they did a survey and found that 74%, that's 3/4 of the adult Australian population, gambled at least one time during the year.
Wow.
74%.
And they're tying that in with
being isolated and lonely.
Sociological problems, isolated and loneliness. Yeah. Well, that comes as a little bit of a surprise to me, but not much, because the other things that people get into to self-medicate, it's a laundry list. Alcohol, drugs, porn addictions. And I can go on, but gambling's right up there with them.
Well, the New England Journal of Medicine, coming back to the States, has reported, I think it was in 2022, they did a study on teenagers, teen deaths, and they found that the fentanyl deaths were going up astronomically. And then in 24, in January 24, the summary seems to show that in the past 5 years prior to 24, the fentanyl deaths have gone up like 5 times what they were in the early 20s, 19 through 24. So
that's poison.
That's poison. It just shows you that the younger generation is having more and more problems with how to adapt to loneliness or how to adapt to growing up.
Adapt to life.
Adapt to life.
Life's challenges.
Life's challenges, absolutely. The Connecticut state, you mentioned earlier, the Representative Kadeem Roberts, and then State Senator Chris Murphy, and a Pennsylvania Senator, Bob Casey, he was involved in introducing legislation into the state of Connecticut to try.
Oh, this is the first for me to hear, a Pennsylvania.
Yes.
So so not only Connecticut now.
Hopefully Bob Casey in Pennsylvania, he's a senator, is going to be pushing the ball forward in Pennsylvania. We know of nobody who's pushing the ball forward in Virginia,
right,
except Fred and John Talks.
Yeah.
So we're making that appeal out there.
Not to make any grandiose claims, but I don't see many other people talking about it.
So let's make some suggestions and maybe take the higher road of what can we do to maybe promote some change in this whole issue.
Yes.
In Australia, they have a concept called village hubs. And when I'm reading about that, it's a collaboration of universities and schools to promote togetherness and to bring people together and to take them to things. So a village would have a hub, and it's supported by a local university or the middle schools or high schools, and that would be something that could be done here in the States.
Sure.
Because we have already programs out at Laurel Ridge Community College here in the Winchester area, where businesses pair up with the Laurel Ridge to give work transition and work apprenticeships before they're even hired. So they're collaborating with the students. So this would be an idea where the universities and junior colleges could collaborate with having people sign up in a civic way to be able to go to plays. Here in our own community, we have a university that does summer theater.
Shenandoah University.
We could have people bust into and watch plays, bust into the university to watch sporting events. They have wrestling, basketball,
Sure.
other things.
Oh, all kinds of sports.
So I like that idea of what's called a village hub.
I like the idea of the hubs, and to pick up on the word village, and we were talking about this off camera. So it takes a village is a phrase that is, when people hear it, has to do with it takes a village to raise children.
Yes.
In other words, not just the nuclear family, but the supports in their wider social life, including schools and teachers, sports coaches, neighbors, and so on like this. So I'm sorry, I drew a blank there. We were on the topic of
A village.
a village. Okay, thank you.
A hub and a village. Are
Thank
really
you.
the same thing.
Once an episode, I have a senior moment.
That's because you are a senior. Fred.
That's because I'm a senior. So that word village, I would propose that, it takes a village also to reach out to people.
That must be one of my important lonely persons.
Yeah, right.
We're good.
It takes a village to also minister to and bring together people, older people. And I'm not just talking about elderly. I'm talking about, among my clients that I see, my mental health and my marital clients, take some of my couples that I work with. Well, they have small children, and a vast majority of their energy and resources are taken up right in their household. Providing for the family, and if they don't have extensive networks of friends or a church community or what have you, they get very isolated. They get very isolated. They get very tired, and so there could be supports for them too if this
Yes.
moves forward.
Yeah, I like the idea. The other thing that came out of the Australian Institute of Health and Welfare .gov report was they have a G'day hotline. Now you know G'day.
Good day, good day,
mate.
good day, mate.
How's it going? All right.
Yeah,
That's a 24-hour a day service, much like we have a hotline here
yeah.
for mental health
Concern hotline.
concern hotline. But I'm thinking that would be something that would be reasonably, able to be accomplished maybe here in the
Yeah.
United States or in communities.
Yes.
Or as part of the village hub, so that if somebody called in, they could be redirected or invited to something.
Right. Just in the way Concern Hotline works, that is not only, I mean, I think I could be wrong about this, but I think its main function is to help people who are having mental health crises
Yes.
and may call into Concern Hotline. They may
Yes.
or may not be suicidal, but they're in a bad way. But Concern Hotline is also a good referral source.
Yes.
They help,
Yes.
they guide the person to, go to this agency or that therapist or that medical doctor.
Yeah, I like that idea. I mean, I've never actually called the hotline, but I know it's functional. I've had patients who've told me that they've talked to the concerned hotline over the years and gotten good information.
Apparently,
They're
it
very
serves.
trained very well.
Apparently, it serves a very good purpose because it's been around ever since I moved here in 1995, and I think before I moved here, and we're in 2024, so
Well, that's
it's
a
a
good.
very needed service.
That's a good, indication that it's necessary.
It's
too.
necessary, yeah, and it's working.
Some of the things that were in the Australian report indicate that they find from their research that paid work seems to reduce loneliness. Now, who would have thought that get a job, have a job, or even commit to paid work? That's good because you get money for your time. That helps your self-esteem, and it just makes sense. So I like that part of when they were recommending what to do. It said paid work, and I thought, well, that seems a natural, logical thing. It doesn't have to always be clubs, churches, volunteers, or sports. Not everybody can do sport. Not
Right.
everybody's active enough to be able to do sports.
Right.
But we've talked before about starting maybe something like a fire pit club, or you could have an eating club, because we believe, you and I, that food brings people together.
And we are in our own little corner of the world. We already have that.
We already
have a
have
men's
that.
group that meets once
Right.
a month for what I call food, fellowship, and fire pit night.
Right. How about people start their own food and fellowship fire pit nights? Huh?
How about that?
That's a takeoff too. Worldwide, have you heard of Sheds?
No.
Sheds is a men's group that comes together, and they usually have a common purpose. Usually it's woodworking, maybe they build model airplanes, maybe they go and help somebody's home be renovated, or do some plumbing work for somebody in
Yeah.
need. But Sheds has been around for quite some time, for several decades.
Is that an acronym?
No, that's what it's for. It's like go to the shed.
Go to the shed.
Go to the shed with your guys. Meet up at the shed,
Oh.
where you have tools, where you do work.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. It centers on some hobbies.
Yes.
Common interests and
Yes,
hobbies.
but it could be plumbing. It could be building a home, or putting a roof on somebody's house.
Right. I like that idea, but I also will put in a plug for the men's group that we have, and that is that it's not centered on something we do. It's centered on our connectedness. We're back to that word.
Okay.
It's centered on the things we have in common. It's centered on friendship. It's centered on breaking bread together and creating community in our small corner of the world. I think if something like that were to catch on among other people, that would be, I mean, you already said it, but I'll say it again. That would be a boon to men who, more often than not, they get isolated
Yes.
when they don't, and they have few friends.
Part of the Australian study showed that even women who are 18 and over who live with other women still complain of being alone. Isn't that interesting? I guess they have each other, but they tend to maybe exclude other people. I don't know what's going on there, but that was one of the facts that came out of their study, is that whenever women lived with women, that seemed to be the fulfillment, and they didn't really expand their friendships beyond that. I saw a news report here the other day that fascinated me, that in retail stores, have you heard of this yet? In retail stores, people are asking for the checkers and checkout people and cash register people to come back. They're kind of done with self-checkout.
Yes, I did hear about, I think you told me about it.
Isn't that interesting? They want to talk to somebody. They're tired of punching in a number or scanning, and then there's a problem with the scan.
99% of the times I go stand in the line because I love talking to the clerks.
There you are. It's like going to the bar.
You can make a person's day. I mean, that
Yes.
job.
Yes.
I'm not here to put down the job itself, but a lot of times those folks they work hard at what can be a
Yes.
pretty boring, repetitious work.
One smile.
And I make conversation with them. I make jokes. I laugh, and
There you go.
they light up.
One smile and one interaction with them, other than just running the
And
items through.
and the good old standards, using please and thank you.
Oh yes.
Even when like the bagger, I always thank the person who takes my money and gives me my receipt, but I also thank the bagger. Thank you very much.
Okay. Well, all those roles are helpful. Otherwise, you've got to put it all in your bag yourself.
Yeah, that's right.
What else, Fred, have you done in your lifetime? Just kind of reach in the depths of your mind and say, what are some of the things you've done? Even currently, I think you're working in some ways with your church on a committee to do things that may help the community.
Okay. Thank you for asking about that. Well, in a twist of irony, today's episode, which was decided upon by you because you did the research, You Are Not Alone. I'm serving on 2 committees right now, and one of them is called You're Not Alone.
I stole that from you.
Yeah, that's great. That's great because it's apropos. The You're Not Alone program is a local volunteer initiative to improve and expand upon the mental health services here in our little town of Winchester.
Okay.
Because I've known this for years, and I think a lot of my clients have known it for years, that, for example, minors, there's no inpatient mental health for kids under 18. There's not even what they call an intensive outpatient program for teens. Someone very close to me, a relative, when she was 15 years old, was suicidally depressed and ended up in the hospital, and had to go 3 hours away to Lynchburg, Virginia, because there was no inpatient services here. Now that there is hope on the horizon for that, but still we've gone too many years, decades, since they had, when I first moved here, they did have an inpatient program for. So I'm on this committee, and it's a wonderful experience. I'm on the leadership committee, which is a separate group that meets. I mean, it's all drawn from the big committee, but I'm on a subcommittee, I guess you would call it.
Yeah. Okay.
The leadership, and we do strategic things. And then I'm also, it was a great honor to be asked to serve on the committee because they know I've been a marital and mental health therapist for 32 years. They have a speaker once a month on a Saturday morning, and I am giving the next talk in February on a
Cool.
Saturday.
Cool.
In fact, I want to invite you to come
I
to it,
have to be there.
and maybe even we'll film it. I'm going to give a talk at that. the wheels of change grind slowly, so it's not like it's, overnight it's going to produce a lot of results. But these people are very dedicated. Oftentimes they have people in their family, person or persons in their family who have chronic mental health problems. So their heart and soul is into improving the system. The other committee I'm on isn't as germane to our topic today. It's a program at my church, as you and anybody who's watched our videos knows. I'm Roman Catholic, and it is a startup program in our church called Evangelical Catholic, and has a subtitle of reach out to people who maybe haven't had any religious education. They're confused about their beliefs. They're turned off to certain things about the church, and it's common knowledge that whatever denomination you're talking about, nothing is perfect.
No.
And there's always going to be people who are turned off by things the pastor says or the programs they have.
It's America. Everybody has an opinion.
And it's life. Nobody's perfect and nothing is perfect.
Right.
But I've been very honored to be part of that committee too.
When you were mentioning about the young girl, the 15-year-old, and when we know, and I'm part of understanding that too, because in the last years of my career in OBGYN, there was no inpatient psychology or psychiatric services. And it just makes me wonder, and probably my belief would be that means these individuals, these young people, 16, 18, 20, 21-year-olds, they don't have a lot of good places to turn to for help. And do they take things in their own hands? Is this why we're seeing more and more drug-related deaths? Because they feel alone, they're isolated, they don't have the proper treatment corridors to get into. The doors are closed.
Yes. On a very personal note and then a professional note. On a personal note, my oldest son struggles with some mental health issues. He has high anxiety and extreme perfectionism, and he's struggling a great deal in the job he has now. There was a time when he was on the phone to me, FaceTiming me on the phone 3, sometimes 4 nights a week. And finally, after months and months of efforts and prayers, I got him in to see I found a good therapist for him. And knock on wood, he really likes the therapist, and there's a glimmer of hope. But he also needs good medication, and they're still trying to find the right balance. But now that I brought up my son, I want to throw in something else personal, and then, before I do that, let me say, in my professional life, I was counseling, this is about 3 months ago, I was counseling a man in his mid-30s, never been married, still lives at home. Part of the reason he still lived at home was he was taking care of his ailing grandmother. She has since died. But he was suffering from terrible depression. As therapists, we often, as part of our evaluation of their mental health status, I gave him a questionnaire. It's a common one. It's called the Beck's Depression Inventory. And he scored the highest score that I've ever experienced in my 32-year career. He's so severely depressed. And then when I tried to get him connected to a local psychiatrist, this touches back on how the mental health services now,
not
there's
available.
all these waiting lists, or they're not available at all.
Yeah.
And that was 3 months ago. And I just got a text from him this morning saying, I finally got an appointment. I was on a waiting list and I have an appointment. But when's the appointment? Not for another month. So, he's going to move forward with medication. And then in my answer to him, my text answer, I said, you know where to find me when you get settled with your meds, and then best case scenario is combined with mental health talk therapy. So he might be back. But one more thing, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to monopolize, but we talked about it takes a village. We talked about, you asked me at the beginning, about my 2 sons. Well, I have two sons and a daughter. My two sons are in their 20s. My daughter is going to be 18 in March, so she's almost an adult age. Um, and tying it back in with loneliness, I hardly ever get to see them. And two out of the three live in my hometown because at that age, it's almost developmentally normal. They don't want to hang out with dad.
They're like their peers.
They're with their peers.
Yeah.
They have a lot of activity, and I'm happy for them.
Sure.
They have a lot of activities. They got to do their schoolwork. My 22-year-old son has a full-time job, and he's taken courses at the local community college. But here I am, and even though, as I said before, I feel freed by the Lord Jesus and by God's blessing from this oppressive loneliness, I miss my kids.
Yes.
I miss my kids.
Well, you're
and
not.
the years are going by.
You are not alone. I have two daughters, and one lives about 7.5 hours away in New York, and the other, thank heavens, is only about 3.5 hours away in Pennsylvania. But oh, would I like to be in their lives once a week, twice a week, a couple of times a month. I mean, I would love to have that kind of proximity if it were possible. But this is America,
So
where people are so spread out.
We're in the same boat, if not very similar boat. The only difference is your children are older and they have their own
Right,
families.
they are, yes.
But it's the same experience.
It is the same experience.
I miss my kids. I miss being part of their lives.
Yes. I want to mention, Fred, two other things to our viewers that might be helpful. One thing I did, this goes back about 5 years ago. I was a member of the Winchester Frederick County Law Enforcement Foundation.
Okay.
In fact, that's a mouthful. At one point, I was the president of it because it was just about to die. And that was because the person who was president and in charge of it was the chief of police here in our community. And when he retired and left our community, then the foundation that he actually had started and was supported across the board by many civic communities and nonprofits, just kind of, well, this person was the driver of the organization, and it was just starting to fold.
So when he left, it fell apart?
Well, it was trying to. And so over a period of 2 or 3 years, the Winchester Frederick County Law Enforcement Foundation, I kind of resuscitated it.
Oh.
And that's something that people ought to think about, is that organizations like the rescue squads, your local fire departments, your police departments, they have organizations they're in touch with that they would probably refer you to be able to keep busy and to be doing something important for your community.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I was proud of with the Law Enforcement Foundation is I went to our local university, and they do have a criminal justice system degree.
Yeah.
And so I went to them and said, would you be willing to nominate somebody to come to board meetings just so they could see on the outside of the university, how does this law enforcement community of people function? What do they do? How can we be supportive to them?
How does this work in the real world? Not just in the world of academia.
Yes. And they came, and I think the student really enjoyed his time when he came and participated in the meetings to see how the sheriffs and the city officers talked about their needs. And they have, at that time, a few years back, the law enforcement was under a lot of pressure, and they still are.
Yeah.
But we were responsible for getting packs for the dogs, for the police dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to carry packs when they go into the house or a home or a location to attack somebody or check somebody out, and they have to be protected, so they have their own protection device.
The dogs.
Yeah, the dogs. And we also bought a uniform for training the dogs, which is a big padded uniform, so whenever the dogs jump up and grab their arm or wrist.
When they're being trained.
When they're being trained. But just those uniforms that are heavily padded wear out.
Right.
they
I've seen this on TV.
Yeah, you've seen it on TV. Yeah. So I was kind of pleased to see that side of law enforcement, which I'd never really been aware of. But you can make a contribution to help those people who, even though they're employed, if they're in a situation of society where they're being kind of dismissed, or they're on the downside of community right now, the community doesn't like them, or there's a lot of anti-police
Yeah.
rhetoric and talk,
Yeah.
then they need their spirits lifted up.
They do.
It's not friendly to feel like you're doing something like a public service, but the public doesn't like you.
Very, very true. And harkens back, you mentioned the Vietnam War before. Typically during other wars, especially World War II, I don't know about World War One, the Korean War, they came back as heroes, but Vietnam, they came back as villains.
No, villains, yep. Well, Fred, I think that is enough for our viewers to think about.
What would you say? I'm putting you on the spot here, and if we have to put our heads together about it, that's fine too. I can chime in. What's the gist? What's the main point of our episode today? You are not alone.
Well, I think our public and viewers from YouTube should understand it's an epidemic worldwide. It's not just where they are or what they're experiencing. We have our own problems. You have your own problems. And let them know that there are possibilities out there to make connections. And we've said some things today that might help stimulate them to make connections.
Oh, I think you summarized it beautifully.
And so I think it's the notion really is that you are not alone. And Fred and John Talks is an example of that. We're starting to reach more and more viewers, more and more people subscribing. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, and we have a passion for this. We have a passion for helping people. John was a doctor for 40 years. I've been in the helping professions for 40 years.
Yes.
And this is our new ministry.
It is. Ciao. That's a wrap.
That's a wrap. Ciao. Thank you for watching. See you next time.